going to welcome now star Daryl McCormack. Star and executive producer Ruth Wilson. And showrunner Murtagh. Okay, thank you everybody for being here. So maybe we should kind of start at the beginning. Joe, when did you first find out about the Magdalene Laundries, and why did you think that you wanted to set a murder mystery against the backdrop of this, real life, terrible, tragic, topic?
Yeah. So I first learned about the Magdalene Laundries by watching the Magdalene Sisters. That's right. By watching the Magdalene Sisters, the Peter Mullen film, and that was in my early 20s. My whole family is Irish. My parents are Irish. Their parents are Irish, and I didn't know anything about this until my early 20s. And I didn't realize the significance of me learning about this through film. I went on to learn then over the next decade or so. Just the only people who do know about this are people who are either in Ireland, who are connected to this, or if they're outside of Ireland, it's because they've seen Magdalene Sisters or Philomena or Sex in a Cold Climate, or it's so shrouded in mystery, and people just don't talk about this. And I couldn't believe the subject matter when I read more into it. I couldn't believe how horrific it was. But the thing I couldn't believe more than that was the fact that I knew nothing about it, and that everyone I talked to about this didn't know anything about it. To this day, if you say the words Magdalene Laundries to anyone outside of Ireland, chances are they're not going to know what you're talking about. And that is the reason I wanted to tell this story. Not so, of course, because of the subject matter, but more about that discrepancy between the scale of horror when you read into this. Even a simple Wikipedia search will just blow your minds how awful it is, and how many thousands and thousands of lives this has touched. But the thing that was always more shocking to me was how few people knew about it. And so I wanted to rectify that. And in terms of the genre elements to it, that came partly because it's my natural sensibilities. It's the kind of like filmmaking and TV shows that I love. But to be honest, it just made more and more sense the more I thought about it to treat this subject matter in such a way that I could potentially smuggle it under the radar and get it out to as wide an audience as possible. I think that more people are going to be willing to sit down to watch a very weird murder mystery detective, whatever. I struggle to define this every time I talk about it. Watching Ruth doing what she was doing there. I think people want to see that, and then I can trick them into learning all about the Magdalene Laundries. Whereas if you sort of flipped it, I think you limit the audience.
That's like the opposite of a spoonful of sugar.
Yeah.
Is it true that girls could be committed for just the perceived sin of like being too pretty? I mean that's kind of a wild moment in the episode.
It's wild. It's the more you look into this, there are some like more explicitly horrific details surrounding this, but that is one that stays with you. It certainly stuck with me, and that's why I put it into the episode, because there were cases that we came across in our research, and the Magdalene Sisters, there's also a character who's considered too promiscuous in the town, even though she's a virgin. That was all based on absolute fact. The Magdalene Sisters was based on a documentary called Sex in a Cold Climate, which was made in 1994 in Ireland when the Magdalene Laundries was still in operation, which is unbelievable. And there were, and we subsequently came across more examples of small towns where a girl was very pretty, 15, 16-year-old girl, and therefore considered a temptation to men. And the darker side of that is some of these girls would have been abused by married men, and then it comes to light, and in kind of a Salem witch trial type way, that girl would be the one who receives punishment for that. So it could be covered up so that men could go back to his, nice Catholic life. It's incredibly dark stuff.
It is, yeah. And Ruth, can you speak a little bit about how you got involved in the project, why you wanted to be a part of it?
It was the weirdest thing I'd read. I mean, watching that, I'm like, that is weird. I just thought also the subject matter was so, like Joe's just said, it was, I knew a little bit about this stuff. I had watched Philomena and Magdalene Sisters. I also, Tomb had come out in the news in 2017. Tomb was where they found those remains of about almost 800 bodies of infants that had been left in basically a cesspit at the bottom of one of these mother and baby homes. And that was in the news in 2017, sorry. And so I knew a little bit about it, but not, again, to the detail that we deal with in the show. So I felt like it was a really important subject matter, but I also, it just was really surprising as a script. I mean, I didn't expect her to be doing that at the end of the show, at the end of the first episode, putting a woman in a wall, and I thought, wow, this character's mental and really interesting and has been incredibly traumatized, but she, you know, as the journey goes on, you see her gaining agency and learning to sort of fight for her voice and fight for those other women and herself and her third child. So you see a great journey over the course of the 6 episodes.
And Daryl, what drew you to the role of Coleman? It feels like, you know, between this and Peaky Blinders and Bad Sisters, you've kind of been on all sides of the law. Is there something about crime shows that are appealing to you?
Yeah. No, well, kind of similar to what both Joe and Ruth were saying, but I think there's something about Ireland as a country that tend to kind of keep things quiet, and I thought there was something important about bringing this to light. But on top of that, there was something particularly interesting about Joe's writing. He's managing to really bring the truth of what happened, the trauma that was left with the women that suffered from this, and yet there's moments of comedy and absurdity as well. So I just found that it touched a lot of different genres as a show, and yet you were really exposed to a very real thing.
Yeah, I mean, speaking as an outsider, you know, it's a dark show, but as you said, the tone kind of has this great black humor that feels very Irish, kind of from the outside. I mean, can you speak a little bit about navigating that tone, figuring out, you know, how to incorporate these different strands of different sorts of genres?
I mean, in terms of the humor of it, it was more of an instinctual thing. It wasn't so much a practical choice. I think humor's just really realistic, especially in scenarios like these. I think, you know, we talked to survivors, and some of the stories they told us were funny. They were really funny. There were also stories that were incredibly horrific, but stories that were funny. And I think that I think it's just more realistic and true to life when you have humor, when you have comedy. I always think it's just more emotionally engaging. I think there is something that's particularly Irish about it as well, whether you call it a sort of deflection technique for, you know, for greater traumas or who knows what. But I think you tend to find humor in everything, in everywhere you look. So that was it on the humor side of things. The genre of it, you know, as you can still see today, I'm still navigating what the hell genre fits into. But it was more like it was just going where the story dictated more than anything else, and it was quite a freeing process. And it was very collaborative, and we were able to just draw on as many influences as we wanted, really.
Mm-hmm. Daryl, you are from Ireland, and I think neither, you know, Ruth nor Joe, you didn't grow up there. Do you feel like this is a accurate depiction of, you know, life in small town Ireland?
Yeah.
Minus the murders.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty extreme, you know, it doesn't happen. I'm from a small town Ireland, that didn't happen in my time. But I think what Joe really captured was the kind of element of shame. You know, I think the Catholic Church has had such a profound influence, and it has helped a lot of people have life as well, have guidance. But I think with the kind of hypocrisy, it's left a lot of shame and a lot of secrecy, and I think that was captured so beautifully in Joe's script, and that's something I can relate to growing up in Ireland. So yeah, I feel that was kind of what drew me to it, you know. That was, yeah, so if that answers your question, I think that element of secrecy, and which I think is the most real part of the show for me, is that's what I see and I recognize when it comes to small town, countryside towns.
So Ruth, in this first episode, Lorna almost seems to be two characters. You know, there's the damaged Lorna that she is when she's awake, and there's the sleepwalking version of her who's kind of, you know, more free, but also clearly kind of deranged. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit